Before we step deeper into this nightmare, hit subscribe and tell me in the comments if you'd survive a shift like this. It was November 12th, 2019, a night shift no one wanted, but the schedule had picked me. The city above was alive with cold winds and scattered rain. Down below, I stepped into the underground tunnels of Line 7, ready for another long haul. The subway is a machine that never truly sleeps. Even at night, steel breathes and echoes travel for miles. The smell of oil and damp concrete filled the air as I walked toward my train. To most, it was routine. To me, it was a familiar silence. Until it wasn't. That night, something was wrong from the very beginning. The fluorescent lights in the operator's corridor hummed louder than usual. One bulb kept blinking like it was struggling to hold on. My footsteps echoed too loudly, as if the tunnel was swallowing sound. When I stepped into the control cabin, the glass felt colder than it should. My breath fogged instantly. Even though the heater was on, I adjusted the seat, powered up the controls, and stared at the dim glow of the dashboard. But the silence pressed heavier on me. At 11:47 p.m. sharp, I got the signal to roll out. The headlights cut into the tunnel like blades through smoke. The wheels groaned forward, dragging steel against steel. And for the first time in years, I felt like I wasn't alone in that cabin. I kept glancing at the rearview monitor that showed the empty cars behind me. Empty rows of seats, faint shadows shifting with every vibration. But at the far corner of the last car, I thought I saw something dark, something seated still. At first, I brushed it off. Shadows play tricks, cameras glitch, but the monitor flickered like static snow, then returned. The seat was still occupied. My heart skipped, but I told myself passengers sometimes slipped through late at night. Except the car doors had never opened. No one had boarded. I checked the system again. No fare registered, no stop made. That corner of the train should have been as empty as the rest, but it wasn't. Someone, or something, was sitting there. The air in the cabin grew heavy. My fingers tapped the throttle just to feel alive. I couldn't take my eyes off the screen. The shadow was still seated, perfectly still, no movement at all. That was when I realized I couldn't see a face. I leaned closer to the monitor, squinting at the grainy feed. The figure had shape, shoulders, and hands resting calmly on its lap. But the head was featureless, pale and smooth, as though skin had covered everything human. A shiver went through me. My throat went dry. I tried to radio the dispatcher, but all I got was static. Not the usual city static. This was deeper, layered, almost like whispers hiding inside the noise. I slammed the radio down and forced my eyes back to the tracks. The signal lights ahead glowed red, then green, guiding me through the veins of the city. But no matter how far I went, the monitor showed the same thing, the faceless passenger waiting. The deeper I went into the underground, the colder it grew. Breath clouded the cabin windows, and condensation rolled down like sweat. My reflection in the glass looked pale and distorted, almost like it wanted to change into something else. I gripped the controls tighter, telling myself to focus. This was just exhaustion, maybe a faulty camera, maybe my mind playing tricks after too many night shifts. But deep down, I knew this was different. This was wrong. And then, the figure moved. The faceless figure didn't just sit still anymore. It tilted its head, slow and deliberate, like it was aware of me watching. My breath caught in my throat. I wanted to look away, but the monitor locked me in like a trap. Its posture was uncanny, too straight, too precise, like it was rehearsed. The blank oval of its head gleamed faintly in the overhead light, smooth and unnatural. My fingers trembled as I gripped the throttle, every nerve screaming to stop the train. But I couldn't. Regulations demanded I stay on schedule. And besides, what would I even say? There's a passenger with no face? No one would believe me. They'd laugh. They'd think I was tired. But deep down, I knew this was no fatigue. The wheels screeched louder than usual, metal grinding against metal. Each curve of the tunnel echoed like a scream. My cabin vibrated harder than it should, rattling loose coins in my pocket. The subway was alive, restless, almost angry. I leaned forward, trying to focus on the track ahead. But then, in the corner of my eye, I caught it. Movement. Not on the monitor this time, but in the glass reflection of the cabin window, a shadow, sitting in the seat directly behind me. I spun around so fast, the chair squealed. Nothing. Just the empty operator's corridor stretching into black. But when I turned back, my reflection seemed delayed, like it wasn't keeping up. My stomach dropped. Something was in here with me. The radio crackled suddenly, breaking the silence. But instead of dispatch, a low voice whispered through. Not words, just a drawn-out exhale, like someone breathing into my ear. I froze, unable to breathe myself, as the static hissed on. Then silence. Not even the hum of the engine. For a moment, the train felt weightless, like it wasn't moving at all. The dashboard needles twitched violently, then steadied. I hit the brake instinctively, and sparks shot down the tunnel. The train slowed, grinding to a crawl. My eyes darted back to the monitor. The faceless passenger was gone. The seat was empty. Relief flooded me, but only for a second, because then the camera flickered again. Now the figure was closer. It had moved forward several rows. Without me stopping at any station, no doors had opened, no footsteps had echoed. It just shifted, like the frames of the footage had jumped, and it was still staring directly at the camera. I gripped the throttle, accelerating again. My chest tightened as the tunnel rushed past, a blur of stone and shadow. Every passing signal light felt farther apart than the last, like the city itself was stretching into infinity, and still the monitor glowed. Closer now, the faceless passenger sat stiff, its head angled higher, as though it was lifting its blank face toward mine. My skin crawled. I could almost feel its gaze drilling through the glass. Then came the smell, sharp, chemical, like burnt plastic mixed with iron. It seeped into the cabin, making my throat sting. I gagged, covering my mouth, but the odor grew stronger, saturating the air like smoke that had no fire. I checked the vents. Nothing unusual, no alarms on the dashboard. Yet the stench thickened, coating my tongue, until I could almost taste metal. My vision blurred for a second, black spots clouding my eyes. When the dizziness passed, I looked back at the monitor again. My heart stopped. The faceless passenger wasn't sitting anymore. It was standing right in the aisle, towering over the empty seats. I gripped the edge of the dashboard so tightly my knuckles whitened. This wasn't fatigue. This wasn't a glitch. Something impossible was riding my train, and it was moving closer every time I blinked. The wheels screamed against the track, as if the subway itself wanted to warn me. But there was no one else down here, no one to hear my cries. Just me, the train, and the thing with no face. And then, for the first time that night, it took a step. The figure's step was silent, yet I felt it echo through the entire train. My pulse pounded like the wheels grinding below. On the monitor, its body swayed unnaturally, as though strings pulled it from above. It didn't walk, it glided. I tried the radio again, desperate. "Control, this is Operator 7. Emergency, do you copy?" Static hissed back, louder, sharper. Beneath it, I thought I heard laughter, childlike giggles buried under the noise. My skin went cold, my fingers hovered over the brake. But then the monitor flickered again, and the faceless figure jumped forward another row. It was closer now, only half the car away. My breath came ragged, shallow, trapped inside my chest. I squeezed my eyes shut, praying it was in my head. But when I opened them, the figure had tilted sideways, as if bending to see me through the camera lens. No features, no eyes, yet I felt it grinning. The smell grew stronger, burnt copper and rot. My stomach churned as bile rose. I gagged, swallowing hard, trying to stay composed. Sweat dripped down my neck, but the cabin was freezing, frost crawling across the glass. And then came the sound, faint at first, like footsteps dragging through water, then louder, echoing through the cars. Tap, drag, tap, drag. It wasn't just in the monitor anymore. It was in the tunnel itself. My heart pounded. I leaned closer to the glass, listening. The sound was moving closer, matching the figure's progress on the screen. Tap, drag, tap, drag. The rhythm burrowed into my skull. I tried to force the brakes, but the lever wouldn't move. Stuck solid, like it was welded in place. My veins filled with ice. The train no longer obeyed me. It belonged to something else now. The lights above flickered violently. Every time they went dark, I thought I saw shapes in the cabin reflection, shadows darting, multiplying. When the lights came back, I was still alone, but my gut screamed otherwise. On the monitor, the faceless figure was now just 3 rows away, its blank head tilted upward, face pressing closer to the ceiling, unnatural and insect-like. My stomach flipped, nausea threatening to spill over. The footsteps grew faster. Tap, drag, tap, drag. But now, they weren't just ahead. They were above me, echoing from the tunnel ceiling like someone crawling on all fours. My mouth went dry as dust, and then the PA system crackled to life. My own voice came through the speakers, warped and distorted. Next stop, next stop. It repeated endlessly, even though I hadn't touched the mic. The figure took another step, its body jerking like a puppet pulled too hard. It was only 2 rows away now. My chest heaved, lungs straining for air. Every instinct screamed to run. But where could I go? The train roared forward, faster, uncontrollable. Yet the tunnel stretched endless. No stations, no brakes. The world outside the windows was a smear of stone and shadow. I was trapped inside a moving coffin. And then, the monitor glitched one last time. When the static cleared, the faceless passenger was gone. The seat stood empty, but I wasn't relieved, because this time, I heard breathing behind me. I froze, every nerve in my body screaming. That sound, slow, heavy breathing, was right behind me. I didn't dare turn around. My reflection in the glass was pale, wide-eyed. But there was another shadow rising behind me. My hands shook on the throttle. "This isn't real," I whispered. "It can't be real." But the air in the cabin shifted, as though someone leaned forward, inches from my neck. Warm breath brushed against my ear. I nearly screamed. I thought of my daughter, 8 years old, waiting for me at home. She'd begged me not to work nights anymore. "Daddy, I don't like when you're gone in the dark." I'd laughed it off then. But now I wished I'd listened. My wife had kissed me goodbye earlier that evening, her eyes tired but kind. "Be safe," she'd said. Those words echoed like a curse now. My family thought I was just driving a train. They had no idea what hunted me underground. The breathing grew louder, wetter, like lungs filled with water. I clenched my jaw, refusing to turn. If I saw it face to face or faceless, I feared my sanity would shatter. My knuckles whitened as sweat pooled on the controls. The PA system crackled again. This time it wasn't my voice. It was my daughter's. "Daddy?" she whispered through the static. My heart nearly burst. "Daddy, why won't you come home?" I slammed the mic button. Who is this? Stop it." My voice broke, but the system only hissed in reply. The childlike tone repeating, fragile and cruel, "Come home, Daddy. Please." Tears stung my eyes. I felt powerless, not just as an operator, but as a father. My little girl's voice was sacred, safe, untouchable. Hearing it distorted, twisted down here in the dark, it was like my worst fears bleeding into the steel around me. I finally turned, heart hammering. But there was nothing there. The cabin was empty, shadows stretching long, and yet, my skin burned where the breath had touched me, a clammy chill that wouldn't fade. I collapsed against the seat, gasping. My mind clawed for reason. Maybe a prank, a malfunction, hallucinations from exhaustion. But the voice, it was too real, too perfect. Machines couldn't mimic the warmth of my daughter's tone. The monitor flickered again, pulling my eyes back. The faceless figure had returned, not sitting this time, standing at the very front of the car, pressed against the door that led directly to my cabin. I staggered to my feet. My legs shook as if my bones were hollow. It was here. It had followed me all the way down the train. And now, nothing separated us but a single steel door. I thought of my wife again, of mornings with coffee and quiet laughter, of my daughter's smile when she saw me in uniform. I couldn't lose them. I couldn't vanish into some nightmare. No one would ever understand. Tears blurred my vision as I pressed against the control panel, praying for the end of the line, for daylight, for anything human. But the train kept speeding, no stops in sight. The tunnel stretched forever, and then, the door handle to my cabin began to rattle. The rattling grew violent, metal clanging against metal as the door shook. My heart thundered in my ears. I pressed my back against the opposite wall, eyes locked on the handle, twisting, jerking, straining to open. Then it stopped. Silence fell heavy, unnatural. I exhaled shakily, thinking it was over. But slowly, deliberately, the handle turned itself downward. The lock clicked open, though I hadn't touched it. My stomach dropped like a stone. The door creaked an inch, then another. My breath froze. The monitor behind me flickered with static, showing the same door, the same moment, only on the screen. The door was already wide open. I turned back to the real door. It was still only a crack open, but the sound of footsteps echoed from the screen. Heavy, wet, dragging. When I looked again, the faceless figure was already in the cabin on the monitor. My blood iced. I spun around, empty cabin. The figure on the screen stood right behind my chair, looming, its featureless head tilted at a grotesque angle. But here, in reality, there was still nothing. I blinked hard, sweat dripping, and then 2 shadows appeared on the floor, stretching across the cabin. Mine, trembling, and another, taller, standing directly beside me. My chest seized. The air felt like lead. I stumbled back, slamming into the panel, unable to scream. The shadow beside me moved without a source. No body, no presence, just the darkness breathing. The PA system hissed alive again. This time, it wasn't my daughter's voice. It was mine, but twisted, deeper, guttural. "You're not going home tonight." The words slithered through the speakers, each syllable like broken glass. I clutched my ears, but the voice came from everywhere. From the vents, the glass, the metal vibrating beneath my boots. My own voice mocking me, promising my death. My sanity splintered with every echo. The figure on the monitor bent down, its blank head inches from the camera. Slowly, impossibly, the pale void stretched, splitting like soft clay. A mouth formed where there should have been none. Wide, toothless, gaping. In the cabin, I felt warm breath coat the back of my neck. The smell was unbearable. Iron, rot, smoke. I gagged violently, eyes watering. My knees buckled. Something invisible leaned over me, close enough to touch. And then came the whisper, soft as a lullaby. "You're already dead." I collapsed into the chair, trembling. My hands clawed at the controls, desperate for escape, but the dashboard lights went dark. Every needle dropping dead. The train surged forward on its own, unstoppable, like a beast that no longer needed me. The monitor blanked to static. For the first time since the night began, the faceless passenger was gone. Relief stabbed me, but it didn't last. The reflection in the cabin glass wasn't mine anymore. It stared back at me with no face. When the train finally screeched to a halt, I stumbled out of the cabin, heart still hammering. The tunnels were silent, too silent. My reflection still burned in my mind, my face stolen, blank and hollow. The platform I stepped onto wasn't even on the schedule. Dust coated every surface, benches cracked, signs rusted. It looked abandoned for decades, yet the lights hummed overhead, alive, watching. I reported the incident the next morning, voice shaking as I recounted every detail. But the supervisor's face was blank, skeptical. "You're overworked," he said. "It happens. Drivers hallucinate sometimes." But in his eyes, I saw something else, fear. I went digging on my own. Old newspapers, digital archives, forgotten city reports. Line 7 had history. Too much of it. Accidents, fires, unexplained disappearances. Entire trains gone missing between stations, only to reappear hours later, empty. One article chilled me. 1983. An operator reported a passenger with no face before crashing into a dead end. No survivors. The city covered it up as brake failure. But the phrasing, the details, it was my story, decades earlier. I brought it up to a retired conductor I trusted. His voice dropped to a whisper. "You've seen it too then. The Hollow Man. He rides the trains at night. Always has. City won't talk about it." The retired man's hands shook as he lit a cigarette. They say he shows up when the train goes too deep into the forgotten lines. Lines that don't exist anymore. Tracks buried under the city but still alive. I pressed for more, but he refused, muttering prayers under his breath. The fear in his eyes was enough. This wasn't just my nightmare. It was a story older than me, older than anyone still working the rails. I started noticing other things. Colleagues who avoided certain shifts. Engineers who wouldn't ride Line 7 after midnight. Rumors of tunnels that looped and cars that returned with frost on the windows. I even asked a city archivist. He laughed nervously, then leaned closer.
You think the maps are accurate? He whispered.
Half the tunnels down there were built over graveyards, mass pits, workers buried where they fell. You hear things if you listen. My skin crawled. The pieces began fitting together. Death, burial, forgotten places. The Hollow Man wasn't just haunting trains. He was the tunnels, the lost dead beneath the city, given shape. But that still didn't explain why he chose me. Why he took my reflection, my face. Why he taunted me with my daughter's voice. This wasn't random. It was personal. I returned to the cabin days later, off duty, just to stand there. The glass still showed me. My face had returned, though pale and tired. But sometimes, when I looked too long, the reflection would blink late, half a second out of sync. Experts would call it fatigue, trauma, hallucination. But my bones knew better. Something had touched me, claimed me, marked me, and the subway was just the beginning. I prayed I'd never see him again. But prayers don't carry far underground. And then, the dispatcher called. I'd been scheduled for another night shift. The night of my next shift arrived like a sentence. I walked into the tunnels with legs heavy as stone. Every flicker of light, every groan of steel felt like a warning. I knew he would be waiting. This time I brought a small camera of my own. If no one believed me, I'd prove it. I mounted it in the cabin, its red light blinking like a fragile shield. My hands shook as I powered up the train. The tunnels swallowed me whole again. The wheels screeched against the tracks. My reflection stared back from the glass. Normal, tired human. But deep down I waited for the delay. The late blink, the crack in the mirror. Minutes passed. Stations rolled by, empty, silent. My pulse slowed, almost tricking me into calm. But then, faint in the monitor, a flicker, a blur of white where no one should be. My breath caught in my throat. I leaned forward. The faceless passenger was back. Only this time he wasn't seated. He was crawling on hands and knees down the aisle of the car. Each jolt of the train made his head slam the seats. But still he crawled closer. I gripped the mic. Control. I need confirmation of... The line cut with a shriek of feedback, and through it came my own voice again. Broken and mocking, why are you talking to yourself? The camera on my dashboard blinked twice, then shut off. Dead. My one piece of proof stolen before it even recorded. My hands shook with rage and terror, bile burning the back of my throat. I checked the monitor again. The figure was gone. Relief stabbed through me, but only for a breath. Because when I turned, I saw frost spreading across the cabin glass, and inside the frost handprints, pressing from the other side. One, then two, then dozens, fingers clawing, dragging across the surface. Some small like children, some massive, twisted, bent. They smeared the frost as though desperate to get out, or to get in. I stumbled back, heart pounding. The PA system burst alive with a chorus of voices. My wife's, my daughter's, my own, all speaking at once, layered, begging, screaming, laughing. It was unbearable. Like 100 lives in one skull, I slammed my hands against the panel, desperate to shut it off. But the sound only grew louder, louder, until one voice cut clear through the chaos. My daughter's, Daddy, he's behind you. I turned, and for the first time, he wasn't on the monitor. He was here, inside the cabin, standing between me and the door, taller than the ceiling, his faceless head nearly brushing the metal above. My legs nearly gave out. I pressed back into the corner, lungs burning with shallow gasps, his blank head tilted, studying me, though he had no eyes. I felt him burrow through my skin, peeling me open like paper. He didn't move like flesh. He flickered, like frames missing from film. 1 second near the door, the next an inch closer. The world skipped. Reality tearing at its seams, bending around his presence. I tried to scream, but no sound came. My throat was locked, strangled by unseen hands. He leaned closer, and for a heartbeat, I thought I saw something inside the blank void. 1,000 faint mouths, whispering in unison. The train lurched suddenly, pitching me forward. Sparks burst outside the tunnel like fireworks. He flickered again, and when the world steadied, he was gone. Only the frost remained, melting down the glass in slow drips. I collapsed into the chair, chest heaving. My reflection stared back at me from the window. Delayed again. But worse this time, it wasn't just late. It was smiling, and I wasn't. The smile in my reflection stretched wider, grotesque, reaching ear to ear where no ears should exist. My knees buckled. I smashed my fist into the glass, but it didn't shatter. It rippled, like water. The reflection's hand rose slowly, pressing against the other side of the window. My own hand twitched without my command, rising to meet it. Skin against glass, a puppet tied to invisible strings. And then the reflection mouthed words. Though its face had no mouth, switch. The glass rippled harder. My chest tightened as if something was clawing inside, desperate to crawl out. The train screeched as lights above burst one by one, sparks raining. In the pitch black between flashes, he appeared closer.
In one frame.
Near the monitor, the next looming behind my chair. I clutched the emergency brake, yanking it down with all my strength. Sparks screamed as the train slowed violently, but the Hollow Man didn't move. He didn't stumble. He only grew taller, filling the cabin like a shadow ballooning. I shouted into the darkness, voice cracking. "What do you want from me?" My words bounced back, distorted, delayed, and the reply came in my daughter's voice again. "I already told you to come home." The glass window quivered, and then my reflection stepped out of it, crawling forward like a wet newborn, peeling itself free. I gagged as it dripped, skinless and raw, but still grinning. It stood upright, mirroring my every tremor. Only this time, it was quicker, stronger. When I backed away, it lunged forward, slamming me against the steel wall with inhuman strength. My head cracked against the panel, blood spilling warm down my face. The clone pressed close, blank eyesless face inches from mine. It whispered with no lips, voice vibrating inside my skull. "You don't belong here." Adrenaline surged. I grabbed the fire extinguisher beneath the console and smashed it into the creature's head. Its skull crumpled inward, but instead of falling, it burst into black smoke, hissing, filling the cabin. I coughed violently, eyes watering, lungs clawing for air. The smoke swirled, forming shapes, faces, dozens of them, screaming silently, all pressed into the vapor. They clawed at me as though begging release. Then the smoke reformed, condensing. The Hollow Man stood again, untouched, stronger, more defined than before. The train surged forward on its own, faster, sparks trailing like a comet in the tunnel. He reached for me, his hand impossibly cold, pressed against my chest. Pain shot through every nerve, like he was peeling my soul away from the bone. I screamed, gripping the edges of the chair, nails tearing. The lights in the tunnel stuttered faster, faster, until the world became a strobe. In each flicker, my daughter's face appeared in front of me, her eyes wide, her mouth crying out, but silent. "Come with us," she mouthed. My heart cracked, torn between terror and the desperate need to hold her. The Hollow Man's grip tightened. I felt my chest splitting open from the inside. The final lights in the cabin exploded. The world drowned in black. Only his voice remained. 1,000 whispers in unison reverberating in my skull. Switch. And for one moment, I couldn't tell if I was still me, or if I had already crossed over. When my eyes snapped open, the train was silent. No sparks, no strobe, just a steady hum, low and constant, like nothing had happened at all.
Oh.
My head pounded. Blood dried thick down my temple. I looked around. The cabin was intact. The controls lit, steady green. The monitors showed empty cars, as if the faceless passenger had never been there. For one fleeting moment, I thought I had dreamed it. But then I saw the glass. My reflection stared back. This time, It didn't delay. It didn't twitch. It was perfect, too perfect. And worst of all, it smiled. The train coasted into the next station. The doors hissed open. Empty platforms stretched into silence. Fluorescent lights buzzing faint above. I staggered out, boots echoing like gunshots in the hollow space. I tried to call control, but the radio was dead. My phone, too. Battery drained to zero, though I had charged it before the shift. No signal, no clock, no proof of time. That's when I noticed the posters on the wall. Torn, faded, stained with age. But the dates read 20 years into the past. My stomach turned cold. The air smelled wrong. Dusty, stale, heavy, like a place abandoned long before I'd arrived. I shouted, my voice breaking, but no answer came back. Only echoes stretching too long. When I turned to the train, my blood froze. The cabin was full, every seat occupied. Not by passengers, but by reflections. Dozens of me, each one twisted, smiling, faceless. They raised their hands in unison, pressing palms against the windows. Silent, patient, waiting for me to get back on board. I stumbled backward, collapsing onto the platform. My breath came in ragged gasps. My vision blurred with tears. One of the reflections broke its smile and mouthed words I couldn't unhear. Too late. The doors hissed shut. The train pulled away without me, screeching into the tunnel. Darkness swallowed it whole, leaving only silence and the smell of iron in the air. I sat there for what felt like hours, or maybe minutes. My mind broke into splinters, unsure if I had escaped, or if I had been replaced. When I finally staggered up the station steps, dawn had broken. The streets above were unfamiliar. Buildings wrong, cars rusted, some models I didn't recognize. The city was mine, but not mine. I caught a glimpse of myself in a store window. My reflection didn't follow me. It lingered, smiling, long after I turned away. And in that moment I knew, maybe I hadn't walked out of the train at all. Maybe I was still inside, trapped in his world, while something else walked free in mine. I'm telling you this because I don't know how much longer I'll remember what's real. The Hollow Man isn't just in the tunnels. He's in mirrors, glass, screens, anywhere you see yourself. So the next time your reflection blinks late or smiles when you don't, ask yourself one thing. Are you sure it's still you?